What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I want to talk about the overall market and break down two very interesting plays for next week, as we have Nvidia and Neo looking very promising. Before I break anything down about the technicals of these stocks, talk about what you should be watching for, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, in just about 4 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Anyways, looking at the market, I want to talk about something very interesting. First off, we have Nvidia, which in my eyes is looking quite decent. So far, it has this nice accumulation structure on the bigger time frame. So if I actually, let me actually close some of these indicators and uh, kind of zoom out on this a little bit. So when doing so, you will notice that we had this nice inverse head and shoulders like structure that developed, and it was forming a very nice looking accumulation right about here. So it still has a very bullish looking technical structure, and considering that we have like Apple's earnings and AMD's earnings, there's a chance that this could lead to some positive impact for Nvidia, especially as we approach other earnings. Now, Nvidia's earnings is a little bit later, so this one may get a later run moving forward. But until that time happens, the stock is still holding up quite nicely. So I'm going to zoom into it like this. So we have this like nice, left shoulder, the head and the right shoulder forming. We've been calling this out for a while, and it's continuing to uptrend. And we have a target of about this 480 area. It still is getting very close to it. 478 to 480. It's not actually that close to it right now. It's still in the 460s. So there is quite a bit of room for upside for it. I think there's a good chance it's going to try to continue to push the upside. Now, this looks like a nice play in my eyes, but don't forget that whatever happens to Apple's earnings will affect this as well, especially if we don't get the pump before the earnings come out. So just be very prepared for that going into the week. And just note that even if we do see a little downside, I still think this thing is going to be bought up very nicely around its EMAs. Also very close to its previous supports, which we saw lots of buying around this like 457 zone, just about there. So I do anticipate some buying pressure for Nvidia, and I do believe there's a good chance, at least from a technical standpoint, that's going to try to make its way up closer to like the 480 area or at least 478. Right? It looks bullish based off technicals. The EMAs are spreading, and we are seeing more and more upside potential for it. But another play that has just as much upside, in my opinion, is going to be Neo, because I'm seeing some very interesting things coming out for this stock. Now, NEO has been up almost every day, 10%, 9%, 11%, because we have some very bullish catalysts coming out, in my opinion. So just looking at the registrations, right? Basically, you could look at some data and look at the insurance registrations in China and see how many of these cars were NEOs. And based off this, it's looking very good for the numbers so far. So between July 1st and the 23rd, we have about 12,700 vehicles that NEO delivered, which is super bullish news for them. I actually have all the numbers listed out right over here. I just wanted to show this to everyone. So between the 1st and 2nd of July, we had about 1,000 registrations. Then after that, for the next week, for the 3rd through the 9th, for the entire week this time around, we had about 3,100. Then after that, the next week had 3,900, then 4,700 for the latest week. So just between the 1st and the 23rd of July, we have 12,700 deliveries, or an average of about 552 per day. Now, if you take that average, that's going to give you about 4,400 for the last remainder 8 days, because we're still waiting for the numbers to come out for the 24th. Let's just say 24th and 31st, this period right here, and also like for what's about to come. So it's like 8 days left for them. And they're most likely going to give us between 4,000 and 5,000 more deliveries during this period, right? Most likely based off this trend right here, based off what we're seeing so far. And that gives us basically a total of about 16,700 to about 17,700 deliveries in total. And that's very bullish. Why is it so bullish? Because look at their numbers so far. For all of 2023, they've never done over like 12,200. It's always been below that much. And they're going to most likely give us, so they're already at 12,700 for the first 23 days of July. And on top of that, for the remainder of the days, it should add up to over like around 17,000, right? Around that much at the very least, at least 16,700 based off what we're seeing. Should be very close to that at the very least, in my opinion. That is going to be a crazy amount of growth month over month between June and July, where last June they just did about 10,700. And then look at their all-time high record for December of 2022. They did about just under 16,000 deliveries. So we're looking at a crazy growth month over month. We're looking at the CEO, William Liebman, keeping his word about how Q3, not to mention the second half of the year, are going to be very strong for the company. And then the ES6 is killing it, which is bullish news, their new model. And we're seeing crazy growth once again, month over month. And then also year over year is crazy good. And we're continuing to see a potentially new all time high record in monthly deliveries for the company. All this stuff is bullish. The technicals look bullish. I called out Neo not too long ago. I'm sure you guys remember that. I was talking about Neo over and over again, why I'm so bullish on it. And this thing got a breakout since it was in the sevens. Now it's in the 14s. And then when you zoom out of the chart, we have very critical levels around $15 basically is going to be the next level to watch for the gap, or very close to where that gap was. Then we have 15.25, which was previous support, which is going to become resistance. Then we have 16, 16.8, and potentially the 18s. If we get strong deliveries, which we most likely will, in my opinion, and then we get good earnings. I mean, earnings alone are not going to be that great because they did see a weak Q2, but it's not just about that. It's also about guidance. The CEO loves to hype investors up. If the guy comes out and starts hyping investors and he talks about how strong Q3 is going to be in Q4, he could pump the stock price again. It could still keep going. And as long as we get more upside pressure after earnings and all these like months going forward with strong deliveries, I could see this thing going all the way up to $22 a share. I think that's very possible, or at least the $20 area for the gap fill. But so far, it's on its way up there, pushing nicely, getting back-to-back 10% days. It looks very, very strong. What do I think is going to happen for next week, though? Before we talk about 20, we have to talk about like 16 to 18. I could see it getting to at least 16 by next week, or even higher than that, especially if we get some very strong numbers, and I think the odds favor that. All right, so I'm seeing a big play in NEO potentially happening because in the very beginning of August, maybe by like by the first or second, depending on where you are around the world, because NEO is in China and their time is actually ahead of here, like in the USA. But I'm just trying to say, when they release their delivery numbers for the month of July, we're going to see all the actual numbers. It should be somewhere between here, most likely, close to 17,000 deliveries for the entire month. That's very bullish news. That's going to help the share price soar. That's going to be another good play for the upcoming week, in case you guys are interested in this. Now, we also have earnings for a bunch of companies. Like, I'm going to talk more about this in another video, but like we have Apple earnings coming out. We have Amazon earnings. You could play those if you want. Those are going to be other plays. And whatever happens to Apple and Amazon, if they move in the same directions after their earnings come out, that's going to cause a massive shockwave in the entire stock market. So make sure you're ready for that as well and do what you have to do. I just want to call out these two plays in particular. Also for Tesla, if we manage to break out and we break like 274, I could see this thing pumping for like 280. It's a possibility, but just to be safe, we need confirmation on it because the daily is still looking not the strongest on the MACD. So we're going to wait and see on Tesla. There's a chance this thing can try to get a run too if it breaks 274. But that will depend heavily on the news. The reason why Tesla was up today and holding up this nicely was particularly because of some news. We'll wait and see what happens with that. And besides that, I mean, most of these plays are quite interesting. We have some earnings coming out, which are going to be fun. I will talk more about earnings tomorrow. I just want to call out these two main plays, Neo and Nvidia in particular. And we will talk more about these plays later on and other things like that. All right. So I will talk more about the overall market in my next video. I will see you guys very soon for Sunday. And until then, thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Tesla in the market to the moon. Same thing with Nvidia and Neo and SPY and the QQQ and ES and whatever you want to trade and futures, whatever it is you want, they're all going to the moon because the long term is very bright, most likely for the majority of these stocks and these ETFs and index funds. Thank you and peace out.